Hello everybody.
Hello there.
Last week we mentioned that we were going on a retreat for ourselves. In other words, not a retreat that we were guiding or facilitating. A quiet retreat. And we thought it might be good just to look back on the experience, especially um, also to give some insight as to what one can expect from a retreat. I mean, it's not a recipe, but to give some feedback and testimony as to what was experienced and what you took out of the retreat, or what we took out of the retreat.
Yeah, so for me, it was part of my curriculum and my training for spiritual direction, and so there were a couple of guidelines that we had to adhere to. Not really very strict, but in terms of a certain amount of silence, and then two spiritual guidance sessions during the retreat.
With your spiritual
with
director?
My spiritual director, or the spiritual director of the institute or the institution where we would be.
And you did yours on Zoom,
yes,
right?
So I did it on Zoom, and I asked my regular spiritual director to have the sessions with her, and then also to partake in the retreat centers program, the daily program of quiet times, or whatever the case,
prayer sessions.
So in terms of where we were, we set our own program, and we sort of stuck to our own rhythm of quiet times and meditation sits and so on. And it was, for me, going into the retreat, it was really meaningful to have my first spiritual direction session right at the beginning, so that I could also talk about my intention for the retreat. Last week we said that it's good to not go into the retreat with a very big expectation of coming to some huge epiphany or anything, but to really just go into it as a time of going deeper. Whatever that, you might get an epiphany, but you might also just be resting really on a very deep level. And for me, that was very much the case. An intention that I really needed rest, and I really needed to switch off from the day-to-day responsibilities, outside worries about family, and just for a couple of days, just to withdraw from that. So to also talk to my spiritual director and to put that as an intention and get some feedback on how she would suggest I do that was very meaningful. And then right at the end, on the last day, I had another session looking back on the retreat, and that was also very good, because then we could sort of tie everything together nicely and see where I struggled, see where it helped me. So all of that was really a very meaningful time for me.
Can I, before we take what you've said further and expand a little bit on that, can I come back to the whole issue of not going into a retreat with a set expectation or hoping to get? There might be times when you are busy with a big problem.
Yeah, and a process of discernment.
And a process of discernment, where you go into a retreat with an expectation to gain clarity or insight, and you take that longing or that expectation into the retreat. And also discuss that with your spiritual director during a retreat.
Yes.
Saying, I'm struggling with this.
It might even be the reason why you're going on retreat.
Exactly.
You are actually going because you are working through a process of discernment. I still think it might be that you don't come out of the retreat with a solution or a clear decision, but that it affords you the time to really sit with it and really to go deeper with it. And so in terms of that, it's not so much an expectation as again an intention to be busy with that process. Yeah, we have to definitely make that clear.
Yeah. So it can be that one has a specific focus, but I think also in no way manipulating or forcing or guiding the outcome.
No.
To be constantly open for this process to happen. And that is the beauty of the silence and the whole dynamic of a retreat. Because we tend, especially when there's something underlying bothering us or something that we know we have to address but we don't get to it, we have so many means to avoid issues, to sidestep them, to repress them. Social media, television, entertainment, whatever, all these things to avoid that. And then with a retreat, being in that space where the focus can be on those issues. And in that sense, it is good to have a spiritual director, because sometimes it might be that you struggle with these things.
Yes, or because you now are sitting in silence, those things that you've been repressing starts coming to the surface, and you are maybe having a really difficult time with that. So in that sense, it's really important to have the spiritual director as part of the retreat, so that you can then discuss that and have somebody walk you through or walk with you through this experience.
Yeah.
So that's important.
I'm thinking now, it is actually strange how we often think that there must be elaborate programs and targets that we want to reach and so on for things to happen, and how powerful silence is in opening things up. Often people say, but what are you doing there? And you say, no, I'm not doing actually much. So what is happening? And then there's this deep interior life unfolding there. So it's a very rich experience. And looking back on the retreat experience, what came to the fore for you?
Well, I think for me the intention was very much to go into the retreat with allowing myself the time to relax, to rest, and also the things that I know that I struggle with, like really just giving myself some time to play creatively. So to not need to work through some theological or mystical reading. I did do some reading of James Finley's work, and that was wonderful to sit with that, but not needing to just be and to allow whatever. So really to be mindful of what's opening up and what I feel like. How I feel like expressing it creatively. So looking back on it, it was really wonderful to have that time and to allow myself, because I often struggle with that part of really allowing myself. So looking back, also in terms of then maybe thinking of what I would like to take away from the retreat and have more of in my life, is the things that I generally struggle with in my day-to-day life. And that what I just realized again, because you also withdraw from social media for the time that you're retreating, and the really the realization of how much time it takes, and how little I miss it when I'm not doing it. When we had very bad reception there, which was wonderful because there's no sound coming through that sort of distracts you and makes you wonder who's trying to reach you. So and just to again realize how much time it wastes in a day that could be used so much more productively, creatively, and all of that. So really to just make a knot again with that, where that's concerned, and then the value of that time of play.
Because you did some playing there, eh?
Yeah, I did some drawing, just doodling. It didn't need to be a big artwork, and just sort of, it was like putting heartfelt things into color, and that was really wonderful. And just to again just realize how much it adds to my creative life, adds to my spirituality, and to really have the intention of working that into my week, get to my diary first. So I often say that's a one big problem, doing an artist date, allowing my inner child to play. So George is saying, you're saying this on the air. You will now be held accountable.
Yeah.
And I think really if that's what it takes, then because it is, I would say for me personally, I know that it is the most important thing that I can do for myself and for God, quite frankly, for my relationship with God. So yeah, and you? For you, it wasn't so much a formal retreat, but you went into it with me.
Yeah.
And how was it for you?
It was very enriching, and I think it's important, especially in the kind of work that we do, that we also have times where we go on retreat. And we don't necessarily guide the retreat, but that we go on the retreat and have the experience of whatever unfolds during that period. So the quiet was wonderful, and I did reading, spiritual reading, not so much light reading. It just happened that I've read also James Finley, and I'm still busy with Exodus. Such an interesting passage, that because I'm reading Exodus and I'm reading a book on Exodus. So that was very nice. But actually, underlying all that, because I don't always get time to read that much, so it was nice to have time, but also realizing that reading must be carried or must be supported by exposure to nature. Going out was nice, to go on walks, and also being exposed to all the sounds of nature, beautiful bird sounds, and realizing how one is part of that. So it was this awareness of the bigger picture. More and more, if I look back on this year, and a theme that is coming to the fore quite forcefully for me is my place in the bigger picture. Where I, as a human being, are not the center of the universe, where I'm part of this bigger choir. So that sense of, I'm busy with my reading and discoveries and everything, but as part of this bigger symphony taking place, a bigger conversation taking place, that I have to learn the language of that conversation. And while there we heard this sound, initially we thought it was something mechanical, like a pressure relief valve or but then Sharon and Bear told us no, it's a strange sound for them as well, and it's probably a bird. And through some searching and digging, we discovered that it's a flufftail, a type of flufftail. And that sound, maybe it played into this whole conversation. How there are sounds that we are not familiar with, and that sound, that had a big impact on me.
Because I think also in terms of, it's such a small little bird, and this call just carried across the valley. It was really quite a loud sound. Yeah,
But it wasn't a shriek.
No, not at all. No, not at all. Very mournful, really.
Yes, yes.
Almost like a hoot.
Yes.
But you'll put it on the
Yes.
on the blog.
Instead of a piece of music this week, I'm going to put the sound clip of this flufftail. Almost unobtrusively taking part of this conversation.
Not even knowing that it's part of the conversation.
Yes, it's just this mysterious interplay. So there's a few things that I take out of that. But then we return now after the retreat, and often coming out of a retreat, it's a little bit of an adjustment as well.
Yeah. This morning I got up and I was really actually shocked by how I was emotionally thrown by the responsibilities and just life as usual. Things that needs to be done, back to normality. It really I was in such a bad mood. It was like I was really I was in this bubble. It was wonderful. I really rested. It was great. And then coming back into our lives here, it was almost as if it was too sudden. It was like I was dropped from somewhere, and as if I had to take an hour or two to adjust again to being in this life, to be busy with what this life is asking of me. So I think it's also something that one needs to realize is that the retreat really takes you away, takes you deep, takes you, and then it already takes a couple of days to just wind down when you go on the retreat, and then you're at this deep place, and then you have to come out of that again. And that is maybe something that we don't often or always realize, is that it can be quite almost a shock to your system. Back to reality.
It's interesting that when Jesus and Peter and John and James, they go up on the mountain of Transfiguration, the disciples had that experience with Jesus, and then Peter says, let's build a hut here, let's stay here, because this is this wonderful experience.
Who wants to go back?
Who wants to go down the mountain again?
Let's just stay.
Let's stay on the mountain of Transfiguration. And with the retreat, in a sense, it's also that, let's stay here, but it's this to and fro movement, almost like breathing. What we have there goes back into life, and what life provides, it goes back into the retreats as well. But to be aware of this dynamic of a retreat, it's a deep experience, and to be gentle with yourself when you enter life as again, and carry on with other responsibilities. And in that sense, a spiritual director plays a big part, because things come up in a retreat, and a spiritual director helps you to place it. So in that sense, it's very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you that we can share that with you, can be in this conversation with you. Good luck with this time of year where things end off and programs close. Can be a hectic part of the year as well, but hopefully it's not that bad.
We'll talk again soon. Have a lovely week, everybody.
Keep well. Bye-bye.
Bye.